Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you, Kripamoy Prabhu. Absolutely glorious, wonderful, thank you. Oh, there you are. Haripo. Omajana Timarandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayadupagadamayam Dadati Swabadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you also for this festival, for allowing me to come. Thank you also to the organizers, His Holiness Keshava Maharaj, for asking me to talk. And I hope I can talk something of sense. Kripamoy Prabhu was talking about surrender, the principle of surrender. And with most things in life, when you have an example of something, someone doing something, it makes it a lot easier to follow because it's no longer theoretical. You've actually seen somebody do that. And of course, there's no better example for us in our life than Srila Prabhupada. The surrender is still just blows my mind in terms of the surrender that he took or that he made when he, basically at the age of 70, had his 70th birthday on a cargo ship, in a little cabin on a cargo ship, going to a completely new country. He'd never been outside of India. Just quite incredible. Surrender, fearlessness, because his name is Abai, fearlessness to do that at that age and that kind of adventure, taking on that kind of adventure. So we have that example in our living memory. We have that example of Srila Prabhupada, which can greatly help us, in our path of surrender. And then when Srila Prabhupada arrived, before he arrived actually, when he first met his spiritual master, but all that time, he was trying to figure out, or he was meditating on how to connect souls, or reconnect souls, I guess I should say, to Krishna. How to bring the fallen souls back to Lord Krishna's lotus feet. It was his kind of constant meditation, how to do that. And we know that he greatly innovated in that regard. He didn't, he didn't follow some kind of cookie cutter model. He was constantly innovating and thinking how he can actually achieve that and bring more and more souls back to Krishna. So the three ways that we know, and the most prominent ways, is obviously Harinam, Sankirtan, book distribution, and Prasadam distribution. But as I say, that wasn't, quote unquote, enough for Srila Prabhupada. If he saw that certain people weren't attracted particularly to those things for whatever reason, at least initially, he expanded it again. So now I'm struggling to think, self-sufficient communities to attract people who are inclined towards that. He created Bhaktivedanta Institute to try to attract the scientific community. He opened restaurants. At one point, actually, in 1974, I think was the year, Srila Prabhupada, in his conversations and his exchanges with devotees, he practically talked about nothing else other than opening restaurants and having reading rooms above. He says, we forget about temples. That's what he wanted to do. So he was constantly thinking how to do it, how to attract people. And then he came up, what year was that? Was that 72? I'm not sure. He opened Spiritual Sky Business. This is all a man in his 70s, in a country that he had never been to before, doing all these things. And then somebody mentioned, who mentioned last night? I think Marge mentioned when you were introducing the drama, you talked about drama. That was another thing. Actually, the quote that Srila Prabhupada made, given we are here in the heart of England, I'm sorry, Prajumna, Leicester, was that Leicester's the heart of England? It's not too far away. Srila Prabhupada said that the English will be conquered by Krishna conscious drama. He actually said that the English will be conquered by Krishna conscious drama. And back in those days, a little bit before my time, not before Kripamoy Prabhu's time, etc., but back in those days, devotees really took that and they went out on the streets and they did spontaneous dramas, contemporary spontaneous dramas. Can you imagine? You've got where are we? Nottingham. You're on the main street in Nottingham, some ladies or whatever, men going down doing their shopping, whatever it is, and suddenly 3-4 devotees who just look like normal, they're dressed in civilian clothes, they just look like normal people, suddenly get into this mad drama right in front of you, shocking kind of people. That was something that was done. And Prabhupada said that England can be conquered by Krishna conscious drama. And of course, the TOVP. That was another project that Srila Prabhupada was meditating on right from the get-go. So this kind of compassionate mood of just trying to attract people to Krishna by whatever means is something obviously that we can follow. Actually, I had an interesting exchange very recently in the last month. I had this exchange. I was on public transport and I was dressed in devotional clothes. And sat down, as you do, on public transport. What was that point about someone sneezing? Anyway, sitting down on public transport, and the person I was sitting beside was a trans person. And they struck up a conversation with me, as people often do when you're dressed in devotional clothes. It's kind of like an intro to them striking up a conversation. And they said to me, thank you so much. I said, yeah, what for? And they said, thank you for looking like that. It makes me stand out less. And they actually had very little, if any, knowledge of the Krishna consciousness movement or what we're about. So they asked me. And then I got into talking about, the soul, eternal, etc., not the body. And they then said that, oh, that's interesting. As you can see, I'm a little different. But one thing that I am afraid of is death. And I said to them, well, I've got good news for you. We don't die. And for some reason, I said this, because normally I'd say the full word, but for some reason, subtly whatever, I said, we don't die, we migrate. And then I said, actually, we transmigrate. To which they really resonated. They absolutely loved it, And then I was thinking, actually, there is a story, I don't know the detail of it, so I should be a little careful, but there is a story about Srila Prabhupada, about a devotee having to deal with that issue themselves, in terms of identity. I mean, a little hard for me to understand, if you're a devotee, why you would particularly, but anyway, they had that. And Srila Prabhupada's response was, that's okay, just decide what you want to be, and then stick with that. So even that, Srila Prabhupada was expressing that kind of liberal mood and that inclusive mood to try to bring everyone to Krishna. So I'm to talk about the TOVP, and the original temple in Mayapur, before the TOVP started to be built, TOVP, as we all know, I think, stands for the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. The original temple that's still there, of course, where Shishi Radha Madhava are currently residing in the Panchatattva, is called the Chandradoya Mandir, the rising moon of Mayapur. And Srila Prabhupada said that this is all to do with Lord Chaitanya and him being the rising moon and spreading the benediction, the rays of the benediction moon, the cooling rays to damp down the blazing fire of material existence. And he said, I want you to make it rise more and more. Now, this was before the TOVP had been started. I want you to make it rise more and more. And then he said, actually, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda, they are not to be locked up in your cupboard. How many people have Gaunataya deities locked up in their cupboard at home? They're not to be locked up in their cupboard. They are meant to be distributed far and wide so everybody can benefit from these cooling rays of the benediction moon. And we just have to take Lord Chaitanya's own words in the second line of the first verse of Shikshastakam, Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vijavadu Jivanam. That Shreya, the auspiciousness, Kairava of this white lotus, Chandrika, the moon, Vitaranam is spreading, Vita, and it's spreading. Vijavadu Jivanam, it's the wife of life, I think is the direct translation. It is the wife of life and the topmost education. And of course, Prabhupada translates it just as the rising moon, giving that cooling effect to all the people suffering in the material world. And then, in terms of this particular building, which just in case you're not aware, when Srila Prabhupada first bought land at Mayapur, he bought 2 acres, just 2 acres. Currently now, I think we have in the region somewhere between sort of 700, 800 acres. But when Prabhupada was with us, 2 acres what he first bought. And it was just rice fields. All you could see, as far as the eye can see, was rice fields, nothing else. But once he bought that land, he immediately started talking about this project. He even laid a foundation. He actually laid 2 foundations. That's an incredible story in and of itself. He laid 2 foundation stones for this building. And where he laid one of them was where the devotees were trying for decades and decades to actually get permission to build this temple. But the government at the time in West Bengal was a communist government, and they would not give us permission. And we were trying every single route. And then a devotee said, well, what about, because most devotees weren't aware, I certainly wasn't aware, somebody said, well, what about where Prabhupada laid the other foundation stone? And one of the reasons why that was overlooked was because it is where we're building the temple, and it's very close to the other buildings. Whereas the other foundation stone was more away from the other buildings, and the feeling was that was a better location because you had more space, etc., etc. So that's why they were focusing on that. But when they kept on hitting that dead end, they decided that they would try the other place. And the other place where Prabhupada laid the foundation stone was on what they call Pukur land, which is land, sacred land, both for a sacred site, and also it's to do with water, and that's kind of considered sacred also. So because the Prabhupada had laid that, and that was the first one he laid, by the way, as well. That was the first one. Because he had laid that on Pukur land, the government could not refuse permission to build a spiritual building, a temple there. And that's why we are now building that temple there. So Prabhupada was talking about this temple many, many times. And you know, when you think about it, like what an undertaking to build such a huge thing in West Bengal. First and foremost, and I was there when this started, back I think it was 2010, 2011, maybe some of you were there also, when they finally got the permission because it couldn't be refused. So, and like I'm saying, what a difficult place to build such a temple. Because why? Because it's mud. Mayapur is mud. That's what it is. So you can't, this building, I don't know what it weighs, but it probably weighs, more tons than the dollars it costs to build. It's a very, very big, heavy building. You can't build that on mud. By the time you build the first few rows of bricks, one of the rows will already be sinking underneath. You'll be just chasing your tail to keep the building going up. So what had to happen was they put 300 100-foot piles, concrete piles. So can you imagine? I think they're about a meter and a half in diameter, like that. That's not a meter and a half, is it? Maybe not. Whatever it is. About a meter and a half in diameter. They're 100 foot tall, and they have to be drilled right down into the ground. So this machine comes, a pile driver comes, and because it had to come from wherever it was coming from, Calcutta or somewhere further afield, they have to work 24/7. It's not that they can just, they weren't unionized. They can't just work, 9 to 5 and then take a break, because it's too much expense to leave these machines idle. So they're working 24/7. And I can guarantee you, I was sleeping in the long building at the time. That was my room. And I think I was in room 103. And I think the whole night, boom, 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 boom. I think I woke up in room 110. So what an undertaking. So they put those 300 100-foot piles in the ground all around, and then when they were all in, then they put this big concrete slab on top. And that's what this building is built on, that big concrete slab that is supported by those 300 100-foot high piles, just so you know. So Prabhupada, so that's just the foundation. But when Prabhupada was talking about this project, he quoted from the Brahma Samhita, Goloka namni nijadamni tale chatasya Devi mahesha harinama sute shuteshu Tete prabhava nichaya vihitas Govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. And it's describing that the universe, and it's explaining that the mundane world, the lowest level, is Devidam. And by the way, we're not in Devidam, right? Devidam is referring to the demigods, so we're lower than that. So anyway, the mundane world is Devidam, and then above that is the abode of Mahesh, Lord Shiva. Above that again is the Vaikuntha planets, the abode of Hari. And then topmost of all is Goloka Vrindavan, or the planet of Goloka. So Srila Prabhupada is describing this and how tall it should be. It should be at least 300 foot. In fact, it's ended up being 350 foot high building. And the dome should be such and such dimensions. And this is what you have to depict in the dome, all these different levels of the universe, and all revolving around each other. Now, you can just imagine the devotees are sitting in the room. It's probably the first time they've ever heard, a verse from the Brahma Samhita. And now Prabhupada's instructing them that this is what you've got to do. You've got to build this. And I'm not sure what they were thinking, but it must have been pretty sort of wow. And then Srila Prabhupada says, at the end of that conversation, and it will not be difficult. So I think Kripa Mahaprabhu finished by saying, Krishna is in everyone's heart, in the heart of every living entity. So if you surrender to Krishna, then you become empowered and you literally can do anything. So again, the life of Srila Prabhupada, surrendered to Krishna, and how much he achieved at the advanced age of 70. Jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So yeah, he said it will not be difficult. And of course, the reason it won't be difficult, the main reason it won't be difficult is because going back to the rising moon of Mayapur and that beautiful picture we have of Gaunitai, maybe we can have Gaunitai on one screen and the TOVP on the other, that beautiful picture we have of Gaunitai is because Lord Nityananda predicted it over 500 years ago. Again, from our point of view, now this building is happening. It just gives so much faith. It's such a faith builder. Because it was predicted by Lord Nityananda. Now it is happening. He said, Eka Adbhut Mandira E Haibe Prakash, Gauranga Nityaseva Haibe Vikash. That an astounding building. Now they're on both screens. Okay. These are astounding personalities. And there we go. That was looked like the Great Wall of China. And this is an astounding building that we have on screen. So Lord Nityananda said, this is an astounding building will rise from Sridham Mayapur. And the reason it is astounding is not just because of the size of it. I mean, this is an amazing thing. How many people have been to Mayapur recently? Or even just been to Mayapur? Oh, wow, quite a lot of you. When you first see this as you're driving in on the taxi, it's just like, wow, where did that come from, Because everything you've seen on the 3-4 hour drive, whatever it is, from Kolkata, They're just, flat, low-level kind of buildings, mud huts, and all sorts of kind of like that. And then suddenly you turn a corner somewhere, and it's like, wow, like that. Which is very helpful to take your mind off the, the taxi driver. Oh my God. So it's not just an astounding building because of its ginormity, if there's such a word, but it's also because this is where the eternal service of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda will manifest from, that the whole world will be engaged in. And look at it now. Here we are in Nottingham, UK. All the devotees here gathered here. I don't know, when the UK, it's 1969. 1969, when those brave souls, those seven including Saraswati, 7 brave souls came from the US. There were no devotees at all here in the UK. Now we have thousands and thousands and thousands of devotees engaged in the eternal service of Gaura Nitai. And this will just continue. We marvel at what Srila Prabhupada did, and rightly so. But when he left, we understand there were 108 centers around the world. I don't know if we ever did an actual forensic audit on that because, maybe it was 107 and we bumped it up and we said, well, we did one day have a kirtan in Vladivostok, so we'll include that. Or maybe it was 109 and we dumbed it down. It's not really a center, there in Maya. We'll put it down to 108. I'm not sure. But somehow or other we came up with the 108 figure. But when we did, I don't know if anybody's here from ISKCON Communications, but when we did our 2016 ISKCON Communications Journal celebrating 50 years of ISKCON, we had over 1,000 centers. So, sometimes the devotees in the room in Vrindavan, when Srila Prabhupada was going back to Goloka Vrindavan, the devotees in the room, their overwhelming kind of sense was, how can this continue? How can we continue without Srila Prabhupada? But look now. It's continuing, and it will continue. So this temple will be an absolute, I think I have it later in my notes, but I think I'm going to say it now. No, I won't say it now. Let me go to continue on my notes. So Lord Nityananda, predicted it. And of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who was focused on Sharanagati there earlier, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said, yes, one day, the Europeans, I'll start with the Europeans first. The Europeans, the Americans, and all other nations of the world, they will come to Mayapur to chant Gaura Nitai. That's already happening. He also said that in this universe, so Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya, in this universe, the most sacred planet, the best planet, is the planet that we're on. And on this planet, the most sacred, the best place, is Bharatvarsh. And within Bharatvarsh, the most sacred place is Bengal. And within Bengal, the most wonderful place is Nadia. And within Nadia, the most wonderful place is Navadvip, the most wonderful place in the whole universe, because it's the home, it's the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya, and it's the home of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And that's the reason that it's best. It's best because it is there, it is Lord Chaitanya's home, etc. My next one, even without my glasses. And so many wonderful pastimes that were manifest. I'll just mention one, because time is relatively short. I'll just mention one. One is the first meeting of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And again, so instructive for all of us. How many of you have ever been in a temple when the ghee lamp is being passed around? And you're looking and thinking, hey, that person there got the ghee lamp before me. I joined 3 hours before them. Anyway, I don't know if you've ever had those thoughts. I guess I'm revealing my mind. So when Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya first met, what happened? Lord Nityananda, because he's none different than Balaram, the original spiritual master, Lord Chaitanya decided to have a Vyasa Puja ceremony for Lord Nityananda. And as soon as Lord Nityananda copped on to what Lord Chaitanya was up to, he rushed over and grabbed all the paraphernalia and then wanted to do a Vyasa Puja ceremony for Lord Chaitanya. Then Lord Chaitanya grabbed all the paraphernalia and went backwards and forwards, and they were battling over, who should be worshipping who. So again, such a lovely, instructive pastime for all of us in the Hare Krishna movement. And then the other one, of course, the famous one is Jagai and Madai, which is interesting, actually. I was talking yesterday to somebody. Who was I talking to? I was talking to my driver, Bimal Prabhu. And he was telling me, we talking about book distribution, and he was telling me that he doesn't like so much to go on the street. He likes to do door to door. And I said, that's wonderful. He almost said it, the way he said it to me, he was almost being apologetic. Oh, I don't like going on the street, But I do go door to door. Is that okay? Is that okay? I said, yeah, hey, Lord Nityananda went door to door. It's like, it's absolutely fine. It's an interesting discussion in and of itself, actually, because if you go door to door, the only disturbance you create, in one sense, is the ringing of the doorbell. But hey, if someone has a doorbell, they have to expect it to ring, right? What's the point in having one if you don't want it to ring? But that's the only disturbance, really, that you have. Whereas on the street, you have to stop somebody. And that's a challenge. You have to become, we have Vaisheshika Prabhu here this weekend. Thank you, Vaisheshika Prabhu, for coming all the way from the US. And of course, we have Marj, another wonderful book distributor, and so many of you in the room, wonderful book distributors. You have to be expert at that. Because, I often think myself sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I think myself, you see the chuggers, right? The chuggers, in Ireland we have concern Manipur, right? And you see them because they wear their blazer or their high-vis thing with the name of the charity on it, And what do? Okay, how can I avoid these people? Because we don't like to be stopped, right? You've got your business, you're doing your stuff, and you don't want to, ever get distracted or delayed or whatever it might be. So if we're on the street, we have to be really expert. But hey, Lord Nityananda went door to door. For me, it seems like something that we should consider increasing, actually, as a means of distributing books. Anyway, went door to door, met certain personalities, Jagai and Madai, as we all know, and all that went on then around that. But then it culminates with Lord Chaitanya summoning the Sudarshan Chakra, to actually kill them, or particularly kill Madai, right? Yeah, Madai. And Lord Nityananda intervenes and reminds Lord Chaitanya, hey, you can't do this. You can't do this, This is not your Leela. This is not your mood. You've come in the mood of love to conquer people with love, not with violence like that. So then Lord Chaitanya agreed with Lord Nityananda, and he took the sins. It's described how he took the sins of Madai on his head, and for a few brief moments, his beautiful, effulgent, golden color turned a murky kind of grey blacky because he was absorbing all those sins. And then it's described, someone mentioned, I think Kripa Moya mentioned Chitragupta, then it's mentioned that when Chitragupta was tallying the sins of these personalities, he just couldn't do it. It was too voluminous, and in fact, he fainted. It was so bad. I'm just hoping he doesn't faint whenever I get close to him. Then here's another really amazing story that I also only heard recently. I hadn't heard this before. Maybe you have heard it, but I only heard it recently. Srila Prabhupada was chanting japa on the lotus roof. So the lotus building was the first concrete building that was built in Mayapur. They built the Bhajan Kutir, the grass hut kind of thing, which is still there, of course. But the first kind of concrete building was the Lotus building. So Srila Prabhupada was chanting his japa on the roof one morning, and he was circumambulating, or going around the perimeter of it. And at one point he stopped on the... Actually, I don't really know, so I won't. I'll speculate, and then, but if I speculate and get it wrong, someone will put their hand up. Yeah. So he stopped at one corner, the corner that allowed him to look directly, because in those days, as I said, there was no other building, so you had a direct line of sight to the Yoga Pit, where Lord Chaitanya was born. Direct line of sight. So he stopped, and there were devotees with him on the roof, and he asked a question, a rhetorical question, because he went on to answer it himself. He said, what is more important, where somebody is born or the activities they performed? He said, I will tell you, what is much more important is the activities they performed. So here is the Yoga Pit. This is where Lord Chaitanya was born. Our ISKCON campus is representing the activities of Lord Chaitanya. We must make people come here, not go to the yoga pit for a kind of sort of almost touristic ceremonial visit, but to come here to see what this personality actually did in his own life and what he has inspired since he left in relation to this. And again, we go back to the TOVP. Now we have Prabhupada's okay. That temple. And it will depict, everything about Mayapur will depict the activities of Lord Chaitanya. He said, so that is more important. So again, he made the point, you've got to build this temple, make it rise, and make more and more people come. He also said, and maybe not right at that time, but he said, just like the Taj Mahal, we want this to become a pilgrimage site where more and more people come. Now, when Prabhupada was saying these words, it was just the Lotus building that was there. In talking with the Prabhupada disciples that were in Mayapur at the time, none more so than Jayapataka Maharaj, I think the first Gaur festival in Mayapur, I think 50 devotees came. 50. And it was a glorious festival. But 50 devotees came to that first festival. Not very many, right? I'm sure Maharaj would have been very disappointed if only 50 people came to this festival this weekend, you know. So 50 devotees came to that first Gaur festival. And Prabhupada was talking then, we've got to make it like the Taj Mahal in terms of the numbers coming. Well, I just did a little bit of Googling yesterday based on that quote. And if Mr. Google or Mrs. Google or Trans Google, whoever it is correct, is accurate, the Taj Mahal receives, let me go back in. Currently, about 11 million people visit Mayapur each year. 11 million. So that's the first number, okay? The prediction, and I'm sure it's true, and I'm sure it's been scientifically researched, and they've used the best analysis possible to come up with this figure. Gauranga Prabhu is shaking his head in agreement, so it must be true. When this temple opens, that will increase fivefold. So that will mean that 55 million people will be visiting Mayapur each year. And the government are cooperating, because I think the motorway will be completely finished by then. They've only been working on it for about 3,000 years, but you know, it's going to open just before our temple opens. Anyway, 55 million people. So if my mathematics is correct, that's more than 1 million people a week will be visiting Mayapur, right? So 11 million right now will jump to 55 million. When I Google the Taj Mahal, first off, was built in 1632. So given I'm in the heart of England, that was around about the time, a little bit later, but round about the time when you had a certain king who was famously known as divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Okay? That's when they built the Taj Mahal, when they were building Hampton Court. We're talking centuries ago. Okay? The TOVP has not yet opened. And currently 11 million people are visiting, jumping to 55 million. The Taj Mahal receives 8 to 9 million people a year. So already the TOVP is exceeding it. And there is one last statistic I want to mention that we also want to surpass in connection with the Taj Mahal. And that is, and I was really surprised by this figure. Actually, Gauranga, you know, it'd be interesting to know your thoughts, but I was quite surprised by this figure. Only 0.8%, so slightly less than 1% of the visitors to the Taj Mahal each year are international. 99.2% are local people, but Indian people from India living within India. We've got to smash that out of the park. I'm sure we will, but we really have to. The TOVP, Eka Adbut Mandira, Ehai Be Prakash, Gauranga Nitya Seva Hai Be Prakash. It's for the eternal service of Gaunitai for the whole world. It's not just for India. It is for the whole world. But I'm sure that we will do that. But as I say, already more visitors are coming to Mayapur. And think how hard it is to get to Mayapur, you know, compared to the Taj Mahal. I mean, the Taj Mahal is relatively easy to get to in comparison to Mayapur. So this is just, of course, it's predicted by Lord Chaitanya. That prediction was carried on by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And then it was manifest, if you like, by Srila Prabhupada. So why should we be surprised? But it is absolutely incredibly glorious, just unbelievably glorious. Okay, Lotus Root, Taj Mahal. Another couple of quick, one last one, and then I just want to start to finish, actually. Yeah, one last one. Prabhupada arriving in Mayapur one time, goes to his room, sits down at his desk. You know those pictures sometimes you see Prabhupada with his hand behind his head like that? So he sits down in his room, puts his feet up on his desk like that, you know, so he's totally relaxed. He drinks some water, and he says, Mayapur water. You can't taste arsenic in water, by the way. It's tasteless. so the water might taste nice, you know? And Prabhupada was reflecting that, Mayapur water. And then he said, he went on to say, Mayapur water. Yes. He went on to say, Mayapur is so wonderful because if you live in Mayapur, you are living in the spiritual world. And if you die in Mayapur, you go to the spiritual world. So what's not to like? But please don't all go to live in Mayapur, by the way, because, you know, we've got some work to do here. Prabhupada did also say that wherever the holy name is being chanted, you know, is the spiritual world. So yeah, just to put the context onto that. So I'll finish now by a line from Hey Vaishnava Thakur, which Srila Prabhupada says in a conversation with some of his devotees. He says, this is not just reflecting the mood of Lord Chaitanya, it is actually stating the words of Lord Chaitanya. So really powerful. And that line or two lines is, Ekaki amara nahi pai bolo, harinama sankatane. When I first read this and read the translation, it's just like, wow, you know, it's just, these things are just incredible. So this is Lord Chaitanya saying, I alone cannot or do not have the strength to continue and to propagate the Sankirtan mission. So this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead saying this. I alone do not have the strength to continue and to propagate the Sankirtan mission. And Sankirtan means all together, combined together, so he's encouraging. Now, of course, you know, Krishna does that. There's Krishna's, some pastimes of Krishna where he sort of sends out the message that he's dependent on us. Now, in the ultimate issue, we know that Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, is not dependent on us. They're completely Atmaram. They're completely self-satisfied. But still, what an amazing statement. I alone do not have the strength to continue with this movement. So he's encouraging us to get involved. And actually, here's connected to Ambarish Prabhu. And I should have mentioned Ambarish. I'm nearly finished, and I'm only mentioning Ambarish Prabhu now. What an incredible gentleman Vaishnava, such a sweet gentleman, Ambarish Prabhu, and so dedicated to making this project happen because Srila Prabhupada, just like Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj gave Srila Prabhupada the instruction to preach in English or spread the movement in the English language, Prabhupada gave Ambarish the instruction to build this temple. So one time Ambarish Prabhu, and he's going to do it. He's nearly done it. He's going to do it, you know. And he has contributed, by the way, I don't know, something in the region of 25-30 million US dollars, you know, because it's going to be costing about 125-30 million US dollars. But he's contributed something in that range. But here's a story, if you're wondering, because some people might be thinking, sure, why can't you just pay for the whole thing? So one time, Ambarish Prabhu was in Juhu when they were building the Juhu temple. And his service was going out to sign up life members. That was his service. And he found it really difficult. How many people find it difficult signing up? How many people have tried to sign up life members? Anyway, it's not, these certain services, street book distribution, signing up life members, they're not so easy, you know, they're a challenge. So he was finding it really difficult. So he came back one day to the temple and sort of slipped into Srila Prabhupada's room. And when he got the opportunity to speak to Srila Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, I think he took out his checkbook. He said, I would like to write you a check equal to or greater than any amount that I could raise by signing up life members. And Srila Prabhupada said, wonderful, write the check. So Ambarish writes the check and puts it on Prabhupada's desk, and Ambarish is internally thinking, whew, you know. And then Srila Prabhupada looks at it, he says, this is absolutely wonderful, but now you have to go out and sign up more life members. And he said, the reason you have to sign up more life members is you can't get all the mercy. You can't get all the nectar. That's not fair. The whole idea of building this temple, Juhu, and the whole idea of building this temple, the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, is to engage as many people in the service, the eternal service of Shishi Gonitai. So, let me finish. No. I won't finish with that. I'm changing my mind. I won't finish with that. I'll finish with a quote that Srila Prabhupada gave connected to that point about everybody together. Sankirtan, ekake amara nahi pai bolo. And the example he gives is the story from Aesop's Fables. And he says, you remember the story from Aesop's Fables? It's really funny, you know, Srila Prabhupada, he's coming off of India, coming from a Hindu background, you know. When he said that to the devotees in the room, you can probably imagine that none of them knew the story from Aesop's Fables, you know. So Prabhupada did. Anyway, he said, you remember the story from Aesop's Fables, where the father had many children, and he wanted them all to stick together. And he gave the example, you put all the sticks in a sack together, you tie the sack together, now break it. And they all tried, and no, you just cannot break that. You would need like a vice-like machine to break a bundle of sticks together. But then, if you take each stick out individually, it's very easily broken. So Prabhupada said, so we always must be united. We must be bunched up together. And then we will be strong. And the hands of this movement, this movement will be in strong hands, good hands, and it will continue to propagate. It will continue to spread. So whether you want to take the word Sankirtan and or the pastime or the words of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Ekaki Amara and Lord Chaitanya, or whether you want to take an example from Aesop's Fables, please all stick together. It can be tough sometimes. We know it can be tough. We have our false ego. We have our individual interests. You know, it can be so difficult. And I'm speaking absolutely from my own personal realization how difficult that can be. But somehow or other, the greater good is to stick together. One, that we can continue to engage in the eternal service of Gonitai, but also that we can help to bring more and more people to that so they can get out of this material world. And by the way, we know these really highfalutin quotes about, I don't mind when I die. If I go to hell, as long as I'm serving Krishna, I will be happy. I can theoretically understand that concept, and I really admire that concept, but I don't know that it's a particular place that I want to go to do my devotional service. And then I take shelter in the fact that our flagship magazine in ISKCON, what's our flagship magazine? Back to Godhead. Hey, it doesn't say back to hell, it says back to Godhead, you know. So I can take a little shelter. So I'll finish on this. Srila Prabhupada one time said, what a wonderful anecdote to finish, but the Srila Prabhupada's words. He said, this material world is like a toilet. You go in, you do your business as quickly as possible, and you get out as quickly as possible. So let's get out of it as quickly as possible, but let's bring as many souls with us as we possibly can. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki, Temple of the Vedic Planetarium ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Rise Festival 2025 ki, Oh Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.